Bienvenue, benvenuti, and welcome to Expatriotical, the podcast for expats, travelers, and other adventurous souls. I'm Chandra Alley, and after living as an expat with my husband and 4 children in 2 different countries for 6 years, I've learned the arts of pivoting during pitfalls, traveling tastefully for less, and soaking in amazing new cultures without losing your own. Join me as we dive into the joys and challenges of travel and the expat life in every episode. Hey everybody, I hope that you all are enjoying a glorious spring day. Spring in Paris so far this year has been pretty spectacular. That tends to put me in an extra happy, sunny, zesty mood. And it fits really well to have my guest today. Her name is Emma and her company is called Zestie. That's Zestie with an IE at the end. I first encountered her as actually a suggestion, if you will, on Instagram. But her authenticity and genuine care for expat partners in her posts and the words that she said in her reels really hit me. And so I reached out to her to see if she would be interested in doing an interview with me. And she was. But the thing is, she had a big date coming up and I had vacations, yes, plural, as those who listen to the podcast frequently will know that in France, kids go on quote-unquote vacation every 6 weeks for a 2-week period of time. Just talked about that in last week's episode. So it took Emma and I several weeks to finally be able to connect, but when we did, it was wonderful. I'm not going to share too much here. You'll hear all about it in the interview. So let's go ahead and jump in. Welcome, Emma from Zestie. I'm so glad to have you here. This is a topic that we're about to talk about that is really near and dear to my heart, and I'm so thankful that you chose to come on Expatriotical. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So, Emma, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? For example, where are you originally from, and what was your profession before you started your expat adventure?
Yes, so I am originally from the UK, and in 2016 I moved to Dubai with some friends. We were young, we had a great time, and we were teaching. So I worked in Dubai as a maths teacher, and from there I climbed up the corporate career ladder, became a middle leader, and I just became super burnt out, basically, during that whole time. And then it was during that time that I met my current partner, and he got an opportunity to have his job took him to Pakistan. So I chose to make the big leap of faith at the time and go over to Pakistan. And really that was the start of my, what I kind of call my expat partner life.
Okay.
So even though I'd been an expat before, that was the first time I'd ever been an expat partner, and it was completely, it took me by surprise, basically.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I first of all, I have to say, there's apparently a lot of construction. So if you hear sawing and hammering, I just apologize to you and to my audience for that, because there's a lot of hammering going on right now, either below or above me. I can't figure it out. I apologize. But okay, so I love this take that you have, Emma, because not all expat partners have the experience of having been an expat before. So you have a very unique and distinct viewpoint that you can kind of come at things from. And so I love that. So you said, can you maybe divulge a little bit how it took you by surprise?
Yeah, so I'm just going to take us back to Dubai a little bit. When I was completely, when you are an expat and you're a single expat and you don't have your family support network, it's quite understandable that everything becomes very career focused.
Yeah.
And then your whole identity and your whole being becomes what you do and how you're supposed to, your professional outlook on life. And as I started to notice that I was becoming less and less of myself because I was getting more and more tired and just completely burnt out, I started to look at the way that organizations can support their employer well-being.
Uh-huh.
And with that employer well-being, actually, if you focus on that, you can actually improve performance.
Yes.
So that, which is super important because you actually lower, you lower staff sickness, you improve retention, everything that is cost, cost organisationals in terms of sick pay and, recruitment costs are kind of completely neutralised when they start to focus on well-being. And so I started to do all of that, but balancing out doing my positive psychology diploma alongside full-time working when I was already feeling a bit tired. Ooh. It was a lot to contend with at the time. So when the opportunity came to move with my now husband to Pakistan, I was like, great, I'm going to be able to finish off my studies. I'm going to really take this opportunity for myself, to do some additional career and development, all of the things that I was really desperate to do. So I had a very, very clear plan when I moved to Pakistan. What I wasn't surprised, what took me by surprise is when I arrived, even though I had this super clear plan, I was like, oh my goodness, what do I do with all of this time? I didn't have I'd gone from being super structured to like 60-hour weeks where as a teacher you get told what you're doing every hour of the day, to when you can take your holidays, when you're allowed to have a break. It was so structured to them being completely flexible, even when I had a plan and I knew what I wanted to do with that time. So that's the bit that took me by surprise. I then wasn't really expecting the questions of, so what do you do? Like from other people, which is the worst, the ickiest question. I hate it. I really, really hate it. I wasn't really expecting that. And then this kind of initial like gut feeling of like, oh my gosh, I need to justify what I'm doing. I had a plan. I knew what I was doing. I felt so secure in the fact that, I can perform in a professional setting. I can be academic. I can do whatever I want to be. But I wasn't expecting this initial feeling of being like, wow, I need to tell people that how am I using my time? Should it really matter? And that piece there just really took me by complete surprise. And it even kind of just crept into my personal life, when my partner would come home and he'd be like, how's your day today? And I was like, well, I cleaned this and I did that, and then I worked for an hour and then I did this and I did that. And it was a constant feeling of like, oh no, I just had a great day. Why can't we just say, oh, my day was great? Why do we feel like we need to give this to-do list like we've had to justify every moment of our day? Yeah, and I kind of it's linked to just being like I work with this with a coach who calls this like a corporate hangover, and I feel like that, which is really, really powerful. So I feel as though that is kind of where some people struggle when they've had a very strong career identity and they move into expat partner life, that they have this need to understand both worlds. I'm not just this one person. I have so much more to give, and I know it. Whereas, the power dynamics are very interesting when you become an expat partner. And in my situation, obviously had a very strong career identity before.
And I think, so I read a post that you had done a while back on Instagram about the moment that you stopped seeking validation through busyness, which really resonates with me. Ouch, and can you tell us about that? Like, when was that moment when you're like, this needs to stop, if that makes any sense? Can I also say, I think that it can sometimes creep back in and can be a continual struggle,
Oh yeah, I mean, I say that I continually sometimes still do this, and I do notice it, and I'm like, stop it, Emma, you're doing it again. I think ultimately any type of issue is always step one, awareness. Yeah. You have to be self-aware that this is even a thing in the first place. You don't know if it's a problem if you don't even know that it is a problem, it doesn't exist. So to move from having a problem to a solution is always about knowing where I am, being self-aware, and then going, okay, how can I plan for this better in the future? So we sometimes think that when like, oh no, I need to start this new habit, or if I'm trying to lose weight, or I want to go to the gym, that it's just going to happen overnight. If we don't plan and for potential problems or potential situations where we might just be put back into autopilot mode, then we can't expect ourselves to suddenly be 100% perfect in this new world.
Yeah.
So, having this idea of, okay, if we talk about the fitness and the exercise, if I get up in the morning, if I sit there in my pajamas and I watch TV and I, have my cereal or whatever, do I then feel like I want to go and exercise straight after? Probably not. If I put on my gym clothes straight away and then still sit down and watch telly and eat your cereal and do all of that stuff, am I more likely then to go and do my exercise? Well, yes, I'm probably way more likely because I'm now into a bit more of an autopilot routine. So when my partner would start to come home and he would say, oh, how's your day been? I just started to go, okay, what should I say, or what do I want to say in this rather than the to-do list?
Okay.
And that, it is a bit more of a conscious process, but like every habit that we try and develop, the first initial bit is always a conscious effort.
Yes.
And then we move into the unconscious autopilot. That's where the mastery is. But like you say, there are times when we are in even autopilot and then we switch back and we're like, oh my gosh, how did I switch back to that? Consciously, yeah. I have to be self-aware. I figure it out, I change it, and then I can calm down a little bit.
That's perfect. I love that. And I kind of like, you mentioned a little bit, oh my goodness, James Clear, I believe, wrote
yes.
Oh my gosh, Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits.
Exactly. He talks about habit stacking. And I love how you said, because I do this too. I'm like, okay, I want to do yoga today. So if I put on my yoga pants as my outfit, I may be more, sometimes I don't. Sometimes all the to-do things sneak up, but I'm more likely because I'm already dressed for it. And that I do love that conscious effort of thinking about it ahead of time. And I love that. And so I don't think I did justice to the beginning of this to say Zestie is about. Could you please tell us what Zestie is about and why we're getting into your background and where you are now? Can you tell us what Zestie is and what is the Zestie life, as your Instagram handle is?
Yeah, so the Zestie is all about empowering and energizing expat partners.
Yeah.
I feel, like I say, when I moved overseas and became an expat partner, I wasn't aware of how the difficulties that people face. It all sounds so amazing at first. You get to travel the world.
Yeah.
You get to go and do all of this amazing experiences. Sometimes you don't necessarily have to work in the same way, or you don't have the pressure of needing to work full time like you might do in another situation. You might want to work, but when you're in that, it all sounds so amazing. Like, oh my gosh, I have freedom. I can get to go and do this. I can get up in the morning. I can do whatever I want. And then as soon as you're in that situation, everything kind of changes and reality hits. And what I was always surprised about when I first moved and I started to meet people, and that I wasn't the only person feeling like this.
Yeah.
And I think the issue is that not many people talk about how they feel. It's very common, well, especially in British culture, for someone to say, oh, how are you doing? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm fine, thank you. And inside they're feeling lonely, they're feeling rubbish.
Yeah.
And actually it takes a little bit of vulnerability to open up to somebody, and actually you then receive actually a great load of information about that you're not the only person who feels like this.
Yes.
So my aim and my vision with Zestie is to create more empowered and more energized partners, where we can feel good, where we have really great relationships with our partners, our friends at post, or in wherever our country is, and for our long distance friends at home. We really have this triangular and family as well. This need for all of these things that need to be balanced out. And then also understanding really about what our identity is.
Yeah.
So how can we say, when you get that horrible question, which hopefully we'll be able to delete one day, what do you do? That we can stand strong and we can say, no, this is what I do, and this is what this is what I represent for myself. So yes, really to create a movement would be wonderful to have some more energized partners.
I love that. And I love that because we are so multifaceted as humans that you said the triangular thing, there's so many parts there. And I think that, number one, I have to go back and say, I love the name Zestie. I love it. It just, it makes you feel energized when you think about it. But I love that you're not, I mean, I'm sure you can help in the coaching with career stuff and that sort of thing, but it's really overall wellness and well-being that you're really focused on. And I would love to ask how you said positive psychology degree, is that correct? Can you talk about that and how that's aided you in this new business?
Yeah, so I have a diploma in positive psychology, which is linked to organisations, which I'd love to talk to you about later, but also training other people in understanding the science of well-being. So actually using the research to understand our behaviours, our mindset, and actually how interventions are used to actually have a positive effect on our mindset and our positive feelings. So that has been amazing. I've also done additional training as a life coach, and I've also completed my yoga teacher training, which I like to take a lot of like yoga philosophy. So I kind of see my whole training as very broad, and again, it's like a overlapping Venn diagram. Sorry, my background is maths as well, so I speak in diagrams and visualizations. So my positive psychology is super scientific. You know, we have the scientific research. My coaching experience was very much about the subconscious mind and how we can work on understanding our history as well as how that affects our current day and potentially our future.
Okay.
And then the yoga philosophy is really inbuilt with, you know, deep traditional roots in Eastern philosophy, which is just a fabulous way to kind of encapsulate the whole broad experience of well-being and what we can learn from the well-being. Yes, I hope that answers your question.
No, it does. I feel like, again, it kind of goes with your different trainings. It kind of encompasses the whole thing. I mean, I think when you think of, for me personally, I'm a Christian, but I love practicing yoga. I love the breath work, and I love the focus and when I'm doing yoga, I'm like, I did something for myself today. I did something for myself, and that actually trickles over to my family of what did you do today, Mom? Well, and that's the thing. It's so ingrained in our culture of like, what did you do? Because that's something I ask my kids because I want to learn more about them. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but like you said, basing my validation off of like, I got this done and I got this done. I'm not going to lie, Emma. I love a good checklist. I really do.
Me too. I am with you. I'm with you.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's good. It's that mental separation of validation of who you are from that is really important. But anyways, thank you for explaining that, because it does help me to see the whole encompassing, just basically who you are and how you what you bring to your clients. And so I guess that would lead me to my next question is, what is your goal or your hope for your clients? Like if you have somebody that comes to you that, let's say they aren't necessarily even new as an expat partner, but they're like, I just feel like I need more, or I'm in a rut, or that sort of thing. What is your goal and maybe your strategy to kind of start helping them break out of a bad cycle or whatever kind of issue that they're dealing with?
Mm-hmm. So I actually run a signature expat partner program, which is called Roots and Wings. And I love the fact that you asked me before about the portable job career, the job career coaching things. I think a lot of the time that's kind of what's forced upon expat partners, as if it's going to solve the issue. Like, oh, you can do something. And like you say, it gets that external validation of the tick. What I think is missing hugely with the job career coaching space is the fact that you're forgetting about where am I? Do I even feel good to go into work? Really understanding, like, what is my connection with work? Is it because I'm just want to fill some time? Is it because is it just because I want some stability, security, financial independency? Brilliant, go for it.
Yeah.
What is it that is about this job or the career that you desperately crave? Because if we don't understand the underpinning ideas around that, then we can never actually reach that fulfilling life with the job or the career.
Yes.
As soon as you have that, you're just like, oh, well, I thought I wanted this. And actually the scientific research shows us, they actually researched some expat partners, that you'll have to forgive me, I can't remember who studied this, but they looked at people's general well-being for whether they had a job, whether they wanted a job, and then they compared the two. So people who didn't have a job but wanted a job said that they had worse well-being. People who had a job actually felt stressed, so didn't necessarily feel great. But it was people who didn't have a job and didn't want a job, they felt fine. So it's somewhere between this idea, this desire, and that's hugely, it's the cognitive dissonance. So this understanding of like, I want this, and this is where I am. Having that gap, that's the bit that causes us some distress sometimes. So it's not, it's understanding that the job is the external stuff, and sometimes that's wonderful and that's exactly what we want, but sometimes it's not necessarily what we need. So my whole program of Roots and Wings, we start with really understanding like positive mindset, understanding positive emotions, how we can cultivate that without having the job. Because when we move around to different countries, depending on our circumstances, it might not be possible to get a job in person straight away. So we have to be able to support ourselves and our well-being. We can't be just saying, I'm going to feel like rubbish until I've got a job.
Exactly.
You know, you can't go to a job interview feeling miserable and expect to then get the position. So the whole first couple of months is really about developing strong positive mindset, understanding our resilience, understanding motivation, and getting to the point where we can feel good on a daily, weekly basis by having some sort of structured routine that's just for ourselves. The second element of the program really then focus on relationship building between partners, friends, family, and actually being part of a community. Because within that community, if we can focus on developing that network, that can actually aid the whole job career stuff, which is sometimes the thing that most people pick on. But without that, but you can never get to that community aspect if you're feeling a lack of confidence. You don't want to put yourself out there. So it builds upon going back to the first stages of positive emotions. And then the last bit is about understanding a little bit more about if we do want a job, or what do we want for my passions? Is it charity work? Is it that I just want to, have a passion project at home? Is it a job? Is it a career? What is it that I want? How does it link to my values? Is it going to align with me in this, whatever time of my life I'm in? And how can I then make that portable? How can I take it wherever I want to be?
I love that. I really love it. And I really would love to say that it sounds like maybe, and please correct me if you disagree, maybe your hope and your goal after the Roots and Wings program is to help them fill that gap, that dissonance between like what they want and where they want to go, and those uncomfortable, let's say, sometimes feelings in between. And granted, I think it is important to say uncomfortable feelings are going to happen. We're humans, and but to live in that all the time is not healthy, and that's what you want to get out of course. So
No, you go.
No, so anyway, so I really love that, and I will get back to how everybody listening can contact you and reach. But I have more questions for you, because your story is so interesting as far as you started out as an expat all on your own without a partner. You met your partner, moved to Pakistan. And may I ask, where are you now? And I think that there's also a congratulations in order, because you are newlywed. Congratulations. Can you tell us a little bit? You're welcome. Where are you now, and what does life look like for you right now?
So we're now in Kenya, which is super exciting. Completely different to Pakistan for many different reasons.
I'm sure.
And this is what's always amazing. I've spoken to my friends back from Pakistan, and they're like, wow, you must have obviously the amazing travel experiences in Kenya, it's absolutely unbelievable. But the sense of community is completely different here than in Pakistan. So it's a really interesting comparison. And I was speaking to a friend last week, and she's actually on the way to she'll be going back to London. And she's like, I'm a little bit worried. And I was like, every country has its pros and cons.
Yeah.
You know, we have this whole, you know, here I love it because I can get an oat latte. There was definitely no oat milk in Pakistan.
Okay.
So, you know, the fact that I can have a nice oat latte whenever I want in Kenya is a huge bonus for my day-to-day living.
I love it.
And it's the little things, isn't it? You know, we need
It
those
really
little
is. No, it
the
really,
little
they're
home
like,
comforts.
this just made my day. Yeah.
Yeah. But then at the same time, you know, seeing that some of my friends still live in Pakistan and I'm missing that connection with them that I used to see them every day.
Yeah.
So it's it's really interesting. And another little point that I'd like to say about this whole transition is, you know, when I left Dubai, you know, we weren't engaged. We were basically given it a go. We'd only done long distance up until that point. Which
Okay.
at that point was a super, super scary process for me.
Okay.
I was like, I'm giving up all of this stuff, you know, and I had to really reframe my whole mindset of, this is for me, I'm doing this for my career, I'm doing this for my training. And so to now see that, you know, it's all worked out and we've been engaged and now we're married, it's really wonderful thing that has like kind of shaped our whole journey without having that time in Pakistan. Which is obviously considered a super hard place to live, how much it brought us together. And what I've realized is when you and your partner, or, you know, you have your family, you don't have your wider support network, you actually really become each other's everything. You have to be you have to be the best friend, you have to be a partner, you have to be the family member who you know, you have to be there when you're upset, when you're happy, when you celebrate the big things, the small things. Every single day, you fully rely on that person, and with that relationship is a primary importance for any move around the world. And it was funny. We got back from our wedding a couple of weeks ago, and we were literally in the car on the way back, and we were talking about, you know, what are our goals, you know, how do we want to support each other now that we're husband and wife, and all of these things. And I don't know whether I should admit this, but my initial response, I said, oh, I'm going to carry on prioritizing myself. and I looked at him and I started laughing, and I was like, oh my gosh, what did I just say? And then I actually realized, I was like, this is the reason why I need to continue to prioritize myself, is because when I have more energy, I feel good, I've got my challenge, you know, I have everything going for me. That means that when you come home, you know, I can say what a great day I've had. It means that I can be there for when you're having a hard day. It means that we can both uplift each other. And I can only ever do that when I'm pouring into myself. It means that I have more to pour out. So that, I think, is a super important. I think sometimes when, as a partner, you travel around the world for someone else's job, that you kind of feel like you're always giving and giving. And it's so important to just make sure that you're prioritizing yourself and your needs, because it allows you to show up even more and to give more when you do so.
I really love that you're saying that, because a lot of times it can be, and granted, there are extremes where it becomes like, well, now, like, it can become selfishness, where you're like, well, you know, I needed to, I had a hard day, I really needed to talk to you, but you need, you know, that kind of thing. And so there can be extremes, but I do love that you said when you are prioritizing yourself, which I will say, from my personal experience, it gets harder if and when a couple has children. Like, it gets harder to do that, but it is really important, because then things can come from the outflow of like this. I think when I've had a great day, my kids, when I pick them up, get a happier mom, I'm like, it was so great. I went on this tour today. I did this, you know, that kind of thing. And it really, it does, it overflows, you know, and I think it's really important to definitely prioritize yourself.
Yeah. And I think it's also understanding that, you know, like you say, there are times in your day or in your week or even months at a time where the balance isn't necessarily possible.
Yes, of course.
And I think that we have to just be super aware that, okay, if it's all about the fact that I've got to do lots of giving, you know, all week, can I just have half an hour on a Saturday or a Sunday?
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that I need to have something every single day. It's just the fact that at some point I need to have it. And I think that sometimes we're just constantly on the go and always giving.
Yeah.
And eventually, we were actually talking about this in my yoga class this morning, just like as if we were breathing in and breathing out, that's the giving and the receiving for our body. If we constantly had to breathe out all the time, eventually we would have to breathe in.
Exactly.
So, that's why we talk about the fact that, if you don't make time for well-being, then you'll have to make time for illness.
That's good.
Yeah, it's true, because your body becomes so depleted because we're just giving out too much. So whatever looking out for yourself is, whether it's half an hour a day, it's an hour at the weekend, whatever it is, it's just so important to take that time for yourself.
I love that. Okay, so I have a few questions that I ask for all of my guests, or most of my guests, I should say. What is your favorite thing about being an expat?
Oh, the travel.
Yeah.
I love travel. I just think it's so wonderful. We have like a priority list of where we want to go, and we think, where are we now? Where is kind of not the furthest away from like the UK that I could possibly go to, but where is closer now that we would never really go to from the UK? So really broadening your expansion of all the possible places that might not be possible if you were back home, because eventually home might call at some point, and therefore for us Europe becomes our neighbours on our doorstep super easily. So
yes.
We've deprioritised Europe, even though there's so many places we want to go, and prioritising all of the other places.
I think that's really wise. Like, that's good advice for all the expats listening. Is like, look around you, because when you move, which you most likely will, sometimes there are permanent expats, but like then where you are is going to be farther away. So I love that. What is, and I might be able to guess it because of recent life events for you, what is a treasured memory that has happened during your time as an expat?
Oh, well, I'm coming to surprise you. I'm not going to say that our wedding.
Okay.
Our engagement and, that whole process has been absolutely wonderful. My biggest surprise has been, building Zestie and building a community of people, and where, there are men in our community, but, predominantly females, how when you support each other, how everybody just builds.
Yeah.
And last year I ran my very first Zestie retreat, which was a yoga and mindset retreat.
Love it.
In Pakistan, and it was just all
wow.
ladies, expat ladies coming together, and just the feeling of just love and just gratitude and holding space and energy for each other. It's just unbelievable. And in that at that retreat, there's a lady who is a very dear friend of mine. She came to my very first yoga class after I finished my training, and she didn't know I'd just finished, and she said, "Wow, that was great. How long have you been teaching?" And I was like, "Oh, well, you actually came to my first class," which was a huge compliment to me, which was wonderful.
Yeah.
So, I've been thinking about doing my yoga training. I was like, "Well, you should." And literally within months, she had done her yoga training. When I left Pakistan, she's now taken over the classes that I ran.
That's awesome.
And I just think, how wonderful that, one little conversation can just give you a little bit of courage and motivation to go and do something for yourself. Mm-hmm. And not only that, by me showing up has allowed her to show up, which is now, had this butterfly effect, that she's also now continuing to support the community in Pakistan, which I just think is fabulous.
I think it is too. And I love that, like, that openness of spirit of, instead of, some people are like, oh yeah, well, maybe you could, but because, that maybe it's a small market there, I don't know, but just being like, yeah, do it, chase it, go for it. And how there's room for everybody at the table. I love that.
Yeah. There's always room, and I think that's the biggest issue. Sometimes the whole corporate world, it's always about competition and being better and taking it. But there are billions of people. There are, no one can ever be you, and and that's ultimately people are gravitated to coaches, to yoga teachers to any sort of professional based on their personality, whether they, how they feel about them, how they approach the topic, whatever they're teaching.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so important. So yeah, there's never any sort of competition. We should support each other and shout each other and encourage each other, which is wonderful.
I agree. I totally agree. Okay. One more question, and then we'll get to more about connecting with you and the Zestie community. Are there any last thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us today?
Ooh.
That one catches people off guard. Sorry.
Yes. I would say catching yourself and being self-aware is the most important thing. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that we do in my course is really about this structured routine, and we build that together and make sure that works.
Okay.
But to have something that is constant in your week, wherever you are, every single week without fail. If it's a good day, a hard day, an easy day, it is there. And you don't question it. You don't go, oh, I can't be bothered this week. You just do it. Whatever that is, having something that is makes you feel good, and just do it.
I love that. It's funny because I've never thought about it this way, but in the morning, like for me personally, I get up and I do a devotional, and now looking at it that way, I'm like, you know what? That is kind of my thing. Like it keeps me grounded. Like I'm spending time with God. Like that's just it. And it's like well, on the weekends I don't, but Monday through Friday, it's just how I start my day. And that is kind of my thing of like, well, at least I've done that for myself today. Like that's a really good point.
Yeah. And like you say, it doesn't have to be hours and hours. It's literally just one little thing.
Yeah.
But again, it's the awareness, because sometimes, when life is busy, I just make myself the coffee and then I just literally sit down and have my first sip. And I'm like, oh, that was nice.
That was good. That was it right there.
Yeah,
I love
that was it.
I love it.
It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be big. Just something small that's just for you.
That's awesome. Well, Emma, could you please tell us, how can we connect with Zestie, connect with you, connect with the community that you are building?
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram at the Zestie Life, and you can email me whenever. My email is emma@zestie.org. And I would love to have a chat, and we can have a talk about the Roots and Wings program if that's something that you would be interested in. But generally, the Instagram is the best place to find me, especially if you want your daily dose of just empowerment and to feel good as an expat partner.
I love it. I really love it. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, Emma. And I really hope that some listening ears out there will be like, this is what I need. This is what's been missing, and reach out to you. Again, I'm going to try to remember your handle correctly, at the Zestie Life on Instagram. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chandra. I've had a great time.
Thank you. Me too. What an absolute delight it was to talk to Emma about helping expat partners, or as we like to call them here at Expatriotical, C.I.Ps, or completely irreplaceable partners, bridge the gap and, let's say, find their zen or their peace, even if that's not necessarily in a career. I love the take that Emma has on it, from actually having been a working expat herself and then having transitioned into being an expat partner. I feel like getting coaching from someone that has been on both sides can really be of great value. And so it may come as no surprise that this episode's Shan Select is Emma at Zestie, spelled Zestie. I will be sure to include her information in the show notes so that you can reach out to her. And as usual, I am not an affiliate, just a fan. And once again, thank you to Emma for taking the time to talk to me. As per usual, during an episode interview, we don't have a quote of the day, but I would encourage you to maybe go back and re-listen to some of the really good things that Emma said during our interview, especially on the point of not getting validation navigation through busyness, which is something that I certainly struggle with myself. So no judgment here, but finding ways to work out of that cycle is great. As well as her thoughts on finding things for yourself throughout the day, even if it's just the smallest of things, such as enjoying that first sip of your morning coffee. All of those things really add up. That's it for today, everyone. If you are new to Expatriotical and haven't yet done so, would you please take a moment to follow or subscribe to the podcast? And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, would you take one further moment to give me a 5-star rating and maybe even a kind review? I would really appreciate it. That helps to boost Expatriotical out there to where other expats who are finding their way on their journey can discover this podcast and this amazing community of expats. Thank you all so much, and I look forward to meeting you back here again next week. Until then, this is Chandra Alley reminding you to live and travel in the know with Expatriotical.